next level. I'm so sorry. I have a flu, so I'm a bit down today.
So we're all
getting a lot of energy.
Yeah. Well, tell me how you first became involved in migration.
Oh, it was a sort of a weird story because I made just 2 movies before, 2 features in hand-drawn animation in France, so very small production, kind of family spirited, like producers and everything. And I had no idea how to do 3D or anything to that scale. And Chris Maydandry, he reached out to me and saying, oh, I want to meet you. And I was like, oh, that's okay, why? I'll see, I'll meet him and see why he wants to meet me. But in my head, I was sort of thinking, okay, there's a misunderstanding. He must, like, think of someone else or something like that. And I just went there, and he started like pitching me an idea, so the idea of migration, and it turns out there was no misunderstanding. And I kept telling him I have no idea how to do 3D movies, like so. So I might like just ruin your production and waste your budget. But he was sort of like, like he was confident with the strength of his studio and told me, you'll see, we'll see how it's going. And we started working together. I had this sort of like deal that I told you just before, that if ever, it's not working, you just fire me, there's no worries, like it's, but in the sense that I kept telling him, like, I want to give the best, and that's the only thing I can do is give what I know how to do, but if it's not what you're expecting, well, it's like a couple, we are not going to be happy, so nothing happened between me and Chris, like, it's just like, metaphorically speaking, like, we had to get along, on what we wanted to do so we could be happy and really give the best for the movie. So we had this sort of relationship throughout the production, and 5 years after, he never fired me. So
it was a good relationship.
Yeah, it was really fun.
So what was the appeal of going from church? I don't know if you've seen his other movies; they're beautiful. They are absolutely amazing. But what was the appeal of going from traditional to computer animation?
The thing is, as every kid, like I grew up with. I mean, I loved animation, and I didn't have any barrier on, the medium, like if it's 2D or anything. I discovered Toy Story. I can't remember how old I was, but I just like loved that movie. And even when I was a kid, I tried to use like 3D software. So it's more how life, like takes you. And it turns out that during my professional life, I started like doing more like 2D animation. I actually started doing graphic novel school, and then I went to an animation school that was more like focusing on 2D, so I did 2D, but so I never really had the opportunity of doing 3D, but this was sort of like the chance of doing, like another movie with a medium that I love. So I mean, again, I don't have a very intense. I love stop motion. I wouldn't say I would do a stop motion movie, but I just love Chicken Run. I just love Wes and Gromit, all those movies, like movies. So it's just about like like a medium, a tool.
Yeah. So what was the process like once you got into the thick of it?
Yeah.
What was it? Were there things that you thought would be maybe easier that ended up being harder?
Yeah.
Or things that were harder that ended up being easier?
It was quite complicated for me. The way I phrase it is that in 2D I'm used to draw very minimalistically, meaning that I have a blank page and I just draw lines and I stop as soon as I see what I want to express in the page. So it's like you're starting from nothing and you bring things to the picture until you have a meaning of what you want to say. And with 3D, it felt like the other way around, in the sense that people came to me and asking me everything, every detail of everything. And it was very confusing for me because I'm more used to, even on Ernest and Celestine or Big Bad Fox, I always came at the last step of a production, just changing animation because I could do it. So it's very easy to say, oh, we are going to open his mouth like this, like big mouth open, and here in 3D, for example, for the characters, like when they were doing animation, sometimes I was, oh, he should have his eyes popping out like that, and like his big mouth like this, and I could see their face, of everyone in the room, sort of like, oh, how can we do that? Because we didn't prepare the characters to be able to open their mouth like this and everything.
So everything.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like they built a wooden puppet, and I forgot to tell them every emotion he was going to feel. So and same for the background, you have to design every aspect of it. And then the first time they showed me a background, I had a lot of pressure because they told me that the first time Garth Jennings on scene, he came from live action. The first time he saw a picture of the movie, he cried, and it was very emotional in the room. Everyone hugged and everything. And they told me that before they showed me the picture. So I was sort of like thinking, oh shit, I have to cry, I have to be emotional and everything. And the thing is, I was very sad because I saw the picture and I freaked out because there was way too many elements and I could count the number of leaves, I could count the, I was panicking because I'm more in the sort of like simple, I couldn't get the meaning of the picture. And that's where we started like really working on the shadows and tricks to sort of like remove elements, compared to 2D where you add elements till you get to the feeling. Here we had everything and we started like removing with the shadows, with the defocus, and also with sort of like effects of like paintings, for very discreet, but just like impressionistic, like you would paint a tree, you would just like do a brush stroke and that's it. And they did something a little bit similar with that for the trees or for the grass and stuff like that. Yeah.
Even the characters too, their feathers have a kind of a painterly.
Yeah. It was supposed to be way more painterly, but Chris sort of like held back a little bit. But I was happy with it because it started like looking like a 19th century painting, so maybe too romantic or something. But yeah.
Wow. Was there ever a talk of doing the movie in the style of the prologue? Because that is it's CG, but it's like.
Yeah. No, I mean it was just for me like just a little bridge, also for me, to go from 2D to 3D, and it was very complex for them to. At first, I wanted to do it almost only me, and I realized very quickly during the production that I was completely crushed by the amount of work, and I wanted to make it in 2D, but I couldn't. Illumination is knows how to do 3D, and I couldn't bring a whole 2D studio because they had no idea how to do 2D. So I would have to become producer, everything, like recruiter of everyone, and I was like, so we did this sort of like 3D painted.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted to try that as well, like just to have a chance of using camera movement with 2D and just test that. I was very amazed by this TV show called Arcane, that was made by Fortiche. For Netflix, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. We could, not try to copy them, but that I thought that was interesting, and we pushed this sort of like 2D style even more, like in this product.
Is there going to be an art book? Because your drawings of ducks are really wonderful. I feel like we need a whole book.
Oh, I wish, but it doesn't really. It's up to me, to be honest.
Okay, all right.
At some point, like Chris asked me to do a graphic novel of the film. But I said, I love ducks, but 5 years of them, I need to of them.
Well, talk about, what the design of the movie was like for you, because again, you do have those kind of like 2D-ish expressions, but it's obviously a hugely complicated sets and everything like that. So can you talk a little bit about designing the movie?
The characters?
Yeah, the characters and the kind of look of the rest of the movie.
The general look was a bit tricky, because again, coming from 2D, in 2D you get to the final picture very quickly, in the sense that you just have to do the background, you just draw on it and you can see what the movie will look like. And here it was 2 years of waiting before we saw the first picture. So it was a little bit freaky, to find how we're going to get there and everything. And we did, of course, a lot of concept art, and also it was quite tricky because visually speaking, it's a road trip. We needed the backgrounds to be beautiful. We talked with Colin Stimson, the production designer of the movie, who also worked on Emperor's New Groove and everything. I love him for that. So and all the artists tended to do those beautiful background with beautiful clouds and rays of sun, but everything like the best of beauty. And when I was seeing that, I was like, yeah, that's wonderful, but I don't feel I can relate to that in the sense that I don't think I've ever seen this in real life. And I kept telling them, try to think of the background that you would, like the emotion that you can have watching the background. And it was hard for them to understand what I was trying to say, so I had to just explain to them something that happened with my girlfriend, where we have this rule, we foster dogs, and every weekend we have this rule that we have to take the dog out on a big walk every weekend, on a big walk in the forest and everything. And one day it was winter and pouring rain like crazy, and I was trying to get out of it, sort of like, I'm a bit sick and everything. And my girlfriend was like, no, we're going, and she was taking the dog, and she was taking me, and I was out. I complained for the whole walk, just complain in the forest, and I'm not having fun, and the dog is not having fun, I'm going to catch a cold, and it's all your fault, and everything. And it turns out that I was so annoying that we started like going back home. And 5 minutes after we decided that, the rain stopped and the clouds started shifting, and there was a ray of sun just casting just on us, and everything around us started like shining like crazy. All the little drops of water started shining, and all of a sudden, it was such a amazing side that it completely shifted my mind. Like I was all of a sudden like very happy to be here, and I became even more of the worst person in the world in the sense that I started like just saying, oh, it was such a good idea, you should go on, we did so good and everything, and my girlfriend was just like, will you just shut up for 5 seconds, that's all I'm asking from you. And, but what I meant, so I told them that, and just to explain, you know, like this moment lasted for 5 seconds, but it had such an emotional impact on me. That's kind of what we're looking for. So I'm not saying you should live that exactly, but try to think of moments where you felt something strong on an ordinary set, you know, like something that's not out of the, you know, it's not Colorado, you know, like those big, you know, like wonderful places, but just something, and let's find a twist all the time. Let's find how it's going to feel like unique, and you have to be at this exact moment, at this exact time to get that. Which is the same feeling that painters, you know, in the 19th century, they were out with their paintings, they were canvas, and they were waiting for a moment that lasted for 5 seconds and just watched it and then try to replicate it. So that's sort of like the spirit that I wanted to infuse for the design, you know, like make sure that we have this emotional connection each time we have a background.
Yeah, and then for characters, it seems like you did want those big expressions, but also there's a lot of subtle, especially because they don't have hands. I mean, you know, that so much is going on with their face.
And there was this thing with ducks where Chris, he wanted the mallards to be exactly the same way that they are in life. He kept telling me, you take a mallard, you put it in an animation movie, and it's good. It's you don't have to change the design. It's already cartoony. And we were like, hey, you know, they kind of all look the same. Maybe complicated. And so, but we started exploring this way, and it was very complicated. We had a duck coming to the studio, like just to you know, like watch him and try to understand, you know, like how he could animate it. And it was the weirdest experience. Like basically 60 people from animation just in a circle like that in a parking lot, and a duck coming out of the box and just looking at all these humans, and humans just like writing down stuff, you know, like watching him, and I kept saying he must feel like what a human must feel when he's abducted by aliens, you know, like, this sort of thing that you must have. But
no probing,
sorry?
No probing.
Yeah, no harm done to the duck, and everything was fine. But in the end, yeah, we I did sketches that felt, you know, that were I can't show them right now because I don't have them, but you know, like very minimalistic, just to get the essence of each character. So very quickly, you know, like with just minimalistically speaking, just get to the essence of a character. Again, like using the 2D technique of starting from nothing and stop as soon as you have what you want to express. And it was very clear, you know, like Mac was this sort of like very rigid character, so he had these sort of straight lines, and we can like still get that in his design, because once we had defined that, we started like bringing back the naturalism of the duck. So that was the sort of process until we could get to the final design. But it was mostly hard for the main family. For the secondary character, you can go nuts. You know, like it's really fun. You just have to find funny ideas. Uncle Dan, I told them, you just have to imagine a pear, you know, the fruit.
Yeah.
And you imagine when it's completely rotten inside and it's liquid and it's just the skin holding it together, and that's Uncle Dan. You know, so that's, you know, you can.
I hope you told Danny to do that. You are a rotten pear.
He actually likes it. The more you make fun of him, the more he's laughing.
And the parrot is kind of an interesting.
Yeah, same. I wanted it to be a
snake-ish.
Yeah, snake is exactly the way I described him. I wanted it to be like very energetic, you know, also this idea of this long vertical character stuck in a cage and everything. I described him as Indiana Jones, but played by Freddie Mercury, so very, you know, like a super character and everything. So it was very fun. You know, like I told the animators, you don't care about the wings. You just like make him like a, you know, like those Chinese dragon. You know, like it's like a snake flying in the sky, and that's it. You know?
Yeah. Can you talk about working with Mike White and what that was like?
Yeah, but I mean, that was, unfortunately for me, to be honest, I didn't have a chance to work a lot with him, because when I arrived, he had finished the script. He had been working on it for 1 year. Chris Melandry has a very close relationship with the screenwriters, so it's more him and the screenwriter, and then he talks, you know, it's more the team, the director that he works with. And when I arrived, so I met him, and it was really, really fun. But the thing, he had to go on Survivor. He had to, you know, like do his thing. And he kept telling us, I'm going to go for 2 weeks. You know, I'm going to be fired. And 3 months later, we were like, where is he? Like, and we learned that he actually was finalist of Survivor. So we were like, okay. And he came back and he had to do the White Lotus.
Yeah.
So we had a few chats, like just to talk about how we could change things, and we discussed some ideas, and that was great, to be honest. It was very stressful once the White Lotus was released because of all this huge success. But even before that, I loved this movie, so it was hard when we had to rewrite things. How do we do that? How are we trying to match this? And it's not always a good idea to try to match someone. So, and Mike was cool with that. He told us you can also have fun and everything as long as the spirit is still there.
Yeah.
So we kept the spirit, and that's how we got the thing.
Was the idea of the humans not talking, was that in the script? It's a very interesting element of the movie.
The humans were talking in the script,
okay.
And it's me who suggested. It's a fantasy that I had for a long time of trying to really make a movie from the point of view of an animal, meaning that an animal, when he hears us talking, he has no idea what we're saying. It's more like words and blah, 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 blah. We actually tried that, the humans doing those weird blah, 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 blah noise. That's actually the reason why Gugu is called Gugu, because the humans were coming to us like that, and they thought it was saying Gugu. But that's a joke that we removed because it was a bit complicated for young kids to get that. So we couldn't get to the end of the idea. So that's why we kept the idea but remained it to the chef being a wild predator, hunting for them, so just grunting and things like that. And we removed all of the opportunities of the humans to talk, and that's how we sort of.
But they sing. There. The nightclub singer sings.
Yeah, that's the irony of it.
Yeah.
that's Yeah, I was hoping you wouldn't talk about
that. We were just talking about John Powell's amazing score, and I was wondering if you could just talk more about that. Yeah, where he came from in terms of, obviously he did 3 amazing How to Train Your Dragon scores and everything else, but talk about.
Yeah, well, he came on the project, Chris asked me who I wanted to work with, and I was like, I don't know, I didn't know American composers, so he started naming names, and I was like, I don't know, and I just told him I want to work with someone who, because I'm used to work, all the movies I made, I do the storyboard and the animatics, so you probably know what it is, the rough of the film, without music at all, it's just dialogues and sound design, but that's all. And because I like the musician to arrive, the composer to arrive, and just really, he has a free range, he can do whatever he wants. And we couldn't do that on Migration, of course, because we had to show it to audiences for test, public screening and everything. But I still had this in my head, so I told Chris I want a composer that can come in and really be a force of propositions, tell me, bring new ideas to the project and everything. And when you mentioned Jean Paul, I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's go for it. I loved working with him. It was really one of the, because I was a bit down when we got to the music, because I was tired and everything, and I couldn't see the movie anymore. I was trying to shoot ducks outside and everything. It was I went to very dark places. But all of a sudden he came in and he sort of gave us a fresh look on the movie with the music, and also he was rising up emotions that I thought we had lost, and he could find them and he dig them out, and he managed to connect them also with the idea of the theme sort of coming back, and all of a sudden it was like watching the movie with fresh eyes. But that's what I like also. I'm not the kind of director that sort of has every idea in his head, and I really loved being sort of group work. Everyone can bring his stone to the project.
Yeah.
And that was perfect work. He was a perfect person to do that.
Did you tempt the movie with How to Train Your Dragon at all?
Yeah, I think there were.
Yeah.
There was a little bit of John Powell's music. I don't think it was How to Train Your Dragon. I think it was. There was more like Rio.
Okay.
But not so much. Not so much How to Train Your Dragon, from what I remember.
Just thinking about those soaring scenes. Would you say?
Sorry.
The flying scenes and
Yeah.
So what was the biggest change that the movie went through during this 5 years? And feel free to tell the story about you in Japan for the 1001th time.
Again, working on a film at Visca. In France, you're used to do the storyboard, and once the storyboard is validated, you just do the movie. So it takes maybe 1 year to do the storyboard, and then you do exactly what's made. And here there was, Chris really wants at any time people to be able to come in and just improve, the movie. So he actually let me like have fun on some sequences, like just suggest ideas, and I pitched them to Mike, and he was really into it, so we could have fun with it. And I mentioned this little scene that in the movie, I don't know if you remember the heron sequence, but they meet herons, and in the first version of the draft, the herons were actually mean, and the ducks were lost. It was full day, and they were looking for Jamaica, so they stopped in this little house that was more like a biker club, like with like people like with Hells Angels kind of characters,
Yeah.
and they were actually trying to eat the ducks, and we did that, and it was really funny, but it felt like like we spent like 15 minutes of the movie of the family saying, "Are we going? Are we not? Are we going?" And they start the trip, and immediately they're threatened by herons to be eaten. So I said it's a bit tough for a beginning, and I told them a little story that happened to me in Japan with my girlfriend, because we're not very good at, both of us are very scared of everything in the world. That's probably have. But we know we have to get out of our comfort zone. So we said we have to do a trip, and we were sort of like, yeah, let's go for a trip. And we decided to go to Japan and doing hikes over there, and we had never done hikes before, so it was sort of like this great thing. And I remember our faces when we were on the train to get to the airport, and we were looking like sort of each other, sort of, are we doing the biggest mistake of our lives? We're not ready for this and everything. And what had to happen happened, meaning that we got lost at some point during one of our hikes in the countryside, in the mountains of Japan, and we ended up lost in a little town that was gathering all the codes of horror Japanese movies, like very dark and old, and we were freaking out because it was about to rain, and the night was coming, and we just were looking for a place, no hotel, nothing, and we looked on Airbnb, and there was one place, one guy offering a home, and the only thing that was written on the ad was, I am a cook. That's the only thing that was written on it. And in my head, I was sort of like, he's a cook, and he's eating lost tourists, And I was hoping that my girlfriend would be the reasonable one and sort of saying, oh, no, come on, being an idiot. But she didn't answer at all. She just remained silent, which I took as a form of approval of my theory. And we went there. The person was very nice, beautiful Japanese old mansion, and he couldn't speak a word of English. We couldn't speak a word of Japanese. He got us in, and there the guy had a huge collection of Victorian dolls, like those beautiful dresses and everything. But the wall covered of them. And in my head, it was the code of Japanese horror movie too much. I started thinking, okay, he's definitely going to eat us. But I was sincerely thinking that, in the sense that I was walking down the corridor, and I was looking if he just had left 2 rooms left for his dolls, so that maybe he's going to eat us and then make us into little dolls to his collection, something like that. And I literally sleep freaking out, with this genuine fear of being eaten, and to a point where I actually even looked for a weapon, and the only thing I found was the fire extinguisher in the toilet, but I brought back in the bedroom, and my girlfriend was like, no, don't do that. Imagine if he comes in the room and he sees you with a fire extinguisher and he freak out, And I was like, why would he come in the room? He's for eating us, so it's a good thing. So we had the whole debate, and it turns out that the next morning he didn't eat us. Spoiler. And I told this little story to my producer, to Mike, and we knew there was a lot of comedy in it, and also as a director it was very exciting because we could make a sequence when you watch it, the goal was to make the audience feel, okay, she's going to eat them, right? She's going to eat them. You see all because it's obvious that she's going to eat them. But if you watch the sequence again, you can tell that she's not going to eat them. We have to find the little clues and everything that makes you think, oh, okay, so it's just me and my perception of her, my prejudice upon her that made me think that, okay, she's going to eat them, but it turns out that she's not. And so it was a very, very funny sequence to make. So that's the kind of little changes that we were offered to do, and each time we had a good idea, was open to change things like that.
Yeah. Do you think you're going to stay in 3D animation, or do you think you're going to go back to 2D? And if you go back to 2D, what from this experience will you be taking with you?
The thing I love the most with working in 3D, I was talking about the cameras and the way you can. The frustrating thing with 2D is that you're a little bit stuck with the camera doing left and right, up and down, and zoom in, zoom out. And as soon as you want to make something more impressive, you sort of it costs a lot. And I think now with all those new software, you can also do a mix of 2D and 3D. So I really love the fact that we don't have this sort of constraint anymore, even for 2D animation. And the handle of the camera, I started like learning how to use it and be careful not using it too much. Like make sure that you have a meaning when you move the camera and everything. So I'd love to. I mean, there's nothing really settled for now. The only constraint that I give to anyone coming to me is no ducks. That's the only thing I tell them. But other than that, to be honest, it took me 5 years to make the movie, and I did the math, and Endless Necessity was 4 years, Big Bad Fox was 3 years. So I kind of want to, make stories faster. So, and I'm a huge fan of graphic novels, so I want to go back to graphic novel as well.
Right.
So I might do. I mean, again, like if they suggest me a project that's more than anything that I want to do in the world, if it's 2D or 3D, that's another question. But it's more of a story that I'm sort of like focusing on.
Are there any properties that you would be like, oh yeah, I would do Mario 2 or something like that?
I don't think I could do Mario because I'm too much.
Not Mario specifically, but anything like
Yeah, I mean, it's up to them. Again, it's very complicated. It's hard to tell that because you have to know who you're working with, what he wants from the idea. Ernest and Cestine, it was not my idea, it was my producer idea. He was in love with the books, and I could feel this love, and we shared the same way to look at Ernest and Celestine. Big Bad Fox, he immediately understood the kind of humor I wanted. And Chris on Migration, he loved what I was suggesting him, so it was very easy to do. But, working with Nintendo, or the first thing, are they interested in that? I don't think so. That's the first thing. And it's more like, what can you bring, to the project? So I don't like to force myself on projects. But yeah, I mean, I would love to answer this question. Of course, I have dreams, but things that we would love to do.
What would your dream be? Tell me. What childhood property that you were dying to reinvent?
Let me think about it. But I'll think about it and maybe come to you.
Okay, yeah. Shoot me an email.
I loved Kirby. I mean, I know it's Nintendo.
That would be great, yeah.
Yeah, I loved Kirby when I was a kid, but I don't think they're planning to do a Kirby movie. But
if they are.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I could do a Kirby feature. Like 1 hour and a half of Kirby just swallowing things. It could be a bit tiring, but yeah.
But no ducks.
No ducks. Yeah. No ducks in
Yeah. But you were also saying that the way that you use the camera in this.
Yeah.
You wanted. There are so many long shots, but they were taxing on the animators.
Yeah. It's not so much the animators. The animators were happy to do it. It's very long for them, of course, but there's this sort of like, it's great. You have a chance of making something grand and a long shot of like ducks flying. So they were excited by it. It's more like there was a thing I didn't expect, the technical aspect of that. That was really, really tough for the studio. Even like calculating, the takeoff. I remember just at some point I was watching the sequence rendered, like the first rendering, but rendered like very rough, like what they call OCC or something like that. And I saw something written like 124 hours, and I was like, what's that? Is that the length of rendering the sequence? And they told me no, it's one picture. So I was like, oh, okay, well that's complicated. So, which means that if there's a bug, like you have to, or if you forgot the duck to fly or something like that, it's a nightmare to render again. So it's more of this kind of problem. It's not so much because it's exciting, it's exciting to do a long shot.
Yeah.
It's more like what's behind that's complicated for them.
What was it like working with the actors, especially because you had two? I mean, Elizabeth and Danny are filmmakers themselves. What was that like?
That was great. I was very, very nervous. First thing being French, I was really afraid I couldn't understand what they were saying.
Cut?
Just me. Okay. But no, it was great. I mean, they were very, very. The thing with Elizabeth Banks is I was happy that she was, coming on the project, and her being a director and producer was also reassuring. Because to be very honest with you, I was a little bit nervous by the fact that I was a male, Chris was a male, Mike was a male, and I was sort of like, are we writing this character the right way?
Yeah.
And so her coming in, I was really open for her to bring, her perspective on it and telling us, this is weird that she said that, and I kept the door open so she could say anything, and she came up with a lot of ideas. She came up with the idea of, the kid who wants to go to the bathroom and, to make a bathroom break, like, and it was not even like her writing it. I was just explaining her. Oh, and they're on the way down, like going back on the trip, like you're in your car, and it's like, oh yeah, I know this situation. Mom, I want to stop. And she started like, having fun on her own. And, and the next session, I started like writing what she had said, and said, okay, you should definitely do that. And Danny had a very different way of working in the sense that you get in, and he has the script, and he reads the line, and then he goes on a full stand-up comedy show with just based on this line of improvising, like a lot of things that you can't put in a children's movie, but are of course the most funniest thing.
Yeah.
And it's great because you really have the feeling that he wants to make you laugh. Like he's there and he's delighted when you see your face sort of like just being all red and laughing to tears and everything. And it was just great, like just having genuine full laughter in a way you can't stop. It was really, really awesome. And all of the actors, to be honest, were just amazing. I was so lucky having such an incredible cast. So I can't name them all, but Kumail was amazing, Keegan was amazing, Rafina was just perfect. So, and Carol came. She's speaking French actually. She's fluent French. So
did she do the dub for the French?
I wanted to, but it was complex, so
okay.
we couldn't.
Okay.
Yeah. I really wanted that. But she's so nice. I mean, they're all very nice. So.
Yeah. Well, that's I think a great place to end it on, and we want to remind everyone. Take